Before Security Breach, Five Nights at Freddy's protagonists were typically known for two things: being silent stand-ins for the player, and most of them probably being the same person. It was with Security Breach that we were introduced to Gregory, who was really the first playable character with, well, a character. And that has continued into Ruin, where we now play as Cassie, Gregory's friend who has come to the Ruin Pizzaplex to rescue him. But what's the deal with Cassie? Surprisingly, unlike Gregory himself, who we knew about personality-wise but had a largely absent backstory in-game, we know a whole lot about Cassie, so let's go through it. Cassie is a young girl of unknown age, but is possibly the same age as Gregory. She has short brown hair pulled into low pigtails, a darker complexion, and either amber or light brown eyes. She wears a red sweater with a starry pin, shorts, dark leggings, and purple sneakers. Her fingers are painted green and she wears a beaded bracelet. Her clothing style is purposefully chosen to resemble the colors of Roxanne Wolf, who is Cassie's favorite character at the Pizzaplex. In first teasers, Cassie looked to be a blonde from the shading of the lighting, and I think this was changed maybe to have her not look too similar to Vanessa. Cassie's model looks significantly different from the cutout, with skin that matches Gregory's and a face that also seems to somewhat match Gregory's. My theory here is that Cassie's in-game model was built off of Gregory's, and since we're not supposed to look at her in-game, especially up close, it wasn't vital to match her to her design on the cutouts. And yes, what you're seeing here is apparently a frequent error where for some reason Cassie's eyes bug out. I think the cutouts are the closest representation to what Cassie's supposed to look like. Unlike the more abrasive Gregory, Cassie tends to be a little softer, though does have a snarky side and is more than a little vocal about her complaints at crawling around through trash and grime, and also expresses impatience when the Gregory on the radio is frequently cut out or doesn't answer her questions. She shows an amount of skepticism at the situation, shocked and in disbelief when using the mask allows her to seemingly teleport through walls. That being said, Cassie is also rather compassionate. Not only is she willing to press on to find Gregory even when worried about her own safety, but she goes out of her way to help the animatronics. And not just help, Cassie expresses sympathy towards the animatronics as well, yes, but she also listens to them and is willing to try to speak and communicate with them. When Sun asks her to turn on the generators, she does. A kindly gesture, yes, but he asks her to do it. But in the case of Chica, she had no obligations to repair her. Chica was mindlessly chasing her, aggressive, but once she collapses, Cassie goes through with repairing her voice box. I know this is technically determinant on whether or not the player chooses to get the voice box, but I'm just going to assume that likely Cassie would repair Chica. She calls out to Monty a few times, but he's just too far gone. She also pleads to Freddy for help. She is one of the few characters in Fnaf to actually treat the animatronics like equal beings. You could say that's because she's a kid, but she's old enough to understand that they are robots and still shows this compassion towards them. But there is a reason for that. The Sun, Chica, Freddy, Roxy, she's actually very familiar with these characters. See, Cassie's father is a technician at the Pizzaplex, and because of this, she spends a lot of time there. Her comments on the Sun and Moon dolls reveal that she used to go to the daycare quite a bit when she was younger, and not just that, but she actually has fond memories of it. She speaks to Chica, Monty, and Freddy in familiar terms, and later on, in a scene we'll delve more into later, she is shown to have a significant bond with Roxanne Wolf. It is possible that Cassie turned to animatronics for closeness that she couldn't find elsewhere. Her father is assumedly a single father due to her mentioning him frequently and never a mother. There's even a post-it note in the game, assumedly from him, saying he'll be home later and that he left her money for dinner. So while they might be close, he isn't always there. Likely how she sneaks into the Pizzaplex in Ruin without him even knowing. But this distance is reinforced with a significant moment in her life, the only one we really know about from in-game, Cassie's birthday party. The cutouts seem to depict this scenario where Cassie was dressed up in makeup for something and then was left crying, and that was likely this party. A party where, as stated by Roxy, none of her friends showed up. It's never clear why they didn't show up, if her friends were unreliable, if they couldn't afford to get into the Pizzaplex, if she doesn't have any friends and instead just invited classmates who decided not to come, but either way, she wound up alone. It was then that Roxy showed up and comforted and entertained her on her special day. As I said earlier, Cassie's favorite character is Roxanne Wolf. She says as much when you read her description of the radio. She wears her colors and merch, she dresses up in makeup styled like hers, and she paints her nails green. During the salon section of Ruin, when in the AR mode, she sees the cutouts of her posing alongside Roxy, admiring that makeup. There's also dozens upon dozens of eyes. While these might just be to symbolize Roxy's obsession with finding her eyes and self-consciousness of her ruined face, it might also reflect Cassie's own self-consciousness. It's not confirmed beyond this, but it would make sense considering her unreliable friends and distant father that Cassie might develop these insecurities about herself, and seeing the image of Roxy being someone so cool and so pretty might lead her to admire her even before the party. As even though the party might have helped Roxy being her favorite, she must have already been a preferred character, being the one Cassie chose for her party, where she tended to her when her friends weren't there for her. Not only was this an impactful moment on Cassie, who continued to see Roxy as her favorite of the group, but she left an imprint on Roxy. During Ruin, not only does Roxy recognize her, but she remembers that she likes carrot cake, her birthday, and assures her that her friends will come next year. So when it comes time for Cassie to deactivate her, it was especially painful for her, with her holding Roxy's hand comfortingly before doing so, and crying long afterwards. But she does this under the assumption that she is helping yet another friend, Gregory. Cassie and Gregory are close friends. We don't know much about their relationship, but if the cutouts are anything to go on, he might have been there to comfort her, possibly during this same birthday party, likely once Roxy was forced out. From the birthday song Roxy and Freddy sing, it seems like their interactions with the birthday children are probably kept short so that Fazbear Entertainment can do a quick turnover to the next party. Cassie goes all the way through the Pizzaplex searching for Gregory, even with her aware of the danger around her, and even questioning the dodginess of the fake voice. Either she really values their friendship, or she clings to what may be her only friend. I honestly think it might more be the latter, as it's pretty apparent that Cassie might have trouble making friends. Throughout her journey through the Pizzaplex, she sees a lot of stuff, has a sizable breakdown, cries a little, meets my child, and eventually winds up in the basement and turns off the security system to find Gregory, who is actually the mimic pretending to be him. He almost grabs her when Roxy is awakened by the power of love, or perhaps the power of coolness, and buys Cassie time to get away, where she gets in contact with the real Gregory and is led away through the tunnels. Now here we're hit with 3 endings. There's also possibly a 4th. There was something weird in the code that looked like a 4th ending, but then it said something like none, so I'm not sure what that is, likely nothing, but just throwing it out there. There was also a room for another ending in a cut map where there was a Freddy, Chica, and Bonnie, and another room with some text in it that says to put a teaser for something called Carnival. Just mentioning that little tidbit. There's also this voice line from what was either the original ending or another scrapped ending. Check out Tetrabit Gaming's video on it, it's crazy.
It's not your fault. I know you did it for me. To save me. But make sure it doesn't follow you.
So the darkest ending is called the Brazil ending. This is a reference to the ending of the movie Brazil, where the main character, spoilers, believes he escapes to a happy ending only to be revealed that he's hallucinating and that he is actually being tortured, but is too far gone to notice it. This ending is activated if Cassie runs down the wrong tunnel to a Fredbear cutout and puts on the Vanny mask. She sees a scene of Gregory, Helpy, and Vanessa on a hill all eating ice cream. She can hear the mimic in Gregory's voice saying he'd found a place to hide.
Cassie, I'm okay. I found a spot to hide.
And then she is left breathing heavily, panicking, trapped. What happens now is unknown, but it's not looking too good for Cassie. In the absolute best case scenario, the mimic has found a hiding spot in the tunnels, and if Cassie ventures out, then it's going to get her. The more sinister possibility is that Cassie is the new hiding spot and that it's an innard situation. Glad to see Mimic following in his senpai's footsteps. Don't expect it'll work too well with a child, though. Though I also don't expect this ending to be the real one. It's more of a secret one, so let's get on to the more likely scenarios. The normal ending and the scooper ending. The scooper ending involves Cassie running into a secret room that is in fact a scooping room, a la Sister Location. though the scooper's on steroids and is fed up with Mimic's shtick. The Mimic, who is now wearing a patchwork costume, comes barreling in and bangs on the window before the scooper gets fed up and plows through him harder than pasta salad that's been left out in the sun. The game then ends. If this was the canon ending, then Cassie is still alive, but might be stuck in the basement, possibly in the scooping room, unless she can get out into the elevator. All things considered, this is still the happiest ending of the bunch, really. The normal ending, I believe that might be the name of it, involves Cassie escaping into a second elevator and starting to escape the basement, only for Gregory to apologetically inform her that he can't risk her getting out and dropping the elevator. Cassie falls, but then, in the last moment, we hear Roxy's voice. It might also be Mimic, as during the Mimic and Roxy boss fight, we can actually hear the Mimic starting to mimic Roxy. But either way, this seems to suggest that Cassie is still alive. Dun dun dun. Yeah. There's a lot of weirdness with this ending. First of all, Gregory's voice lines overlap. Of course, that's not too strange in Security Breach, but I don't recall it ever happening in Ruin before this moment. Secondly, Gregory goes from saying down there to down here in the elevator. Thirdly, Gregory says he's not at the Pizzaplex, and I doubt if he's not at the Pizzaplex that he has a remote control that somehow attaches to and drops old off-the-grid rusty elevators. I'm not sure what's going on here, but it's suspicious. What we can say for certain is that if this ending is canon, then here's what we do know. Cassie at least believes Gregory has dropped her in the elevator. She is likely alive, and Roxy is alive too, unless that voice was the Mimic. And the two may have been reunited again, whether it be her and Roxy or her and the Mimic. So that's where we are now. I'm going to assume the normal ending is canon, but Security Breach kinda made it a little more difficult to track this stuff. The truth is, Steelwool could really just wait to see the reception and where they want to go from here and just choose either of these options to fit their next plan. Really depends on how long they want to lug around lukewarm pasta salad over here. Let's say the elevator ending is canon and that Cassie survives her descent. Okay, so what's the future for Cassie? Well, let's go through the possibilities. Let's just get the saltiest option out of the way real quick. Cassie gets demoted from character to plot device. Her father gets written in as the next real protagonist, and his whole drive is to obsess about saving his daughter in a very Henry-like way. That's a possibility with how much the father is brought up, but I feel like this option would be a waste of Cassie. She's been established as being an actual fleshed-out character, and to have her take a backseat for a subpar father, I would hate to see that happen. Again. Another possibility is that she has a follow-up to this cliffhanger. I wouldn't expect it in Help Wanted 2, and I'm not expecting another DLC for Security Breach, but it feels like the setup is there for a scenario of Roxy and Cassie escaping together, though whether that happens in the game or off-screen is unclear. Likely it'll happen off-screen, but at least then Cassie might return. But how else could she return but as a driving point for someone else, or as an off-screen role, sort of like Vanessa's circumstances? Is there anything else that she could be? Well, I have an idea. So what I'm about to say is not a theory. It's not speculation. It's nothing like that. I don't think this is going to happen. This is just an idea. Outlandish and unlikely, but hear me out before you make your judgment. We've had a female character recently who was set up to play a big role but then kind of flatlined, and it was Vanny. Big Bad built up as this big threat behind the scenes, getting all the merch, getting built up for the games, and then appearing for 5 minutes, and now just a forgotten memory of a forgettable blonde. People thought Vanny was going to be this copycat with her own story and motives, but instead she was just an extension of a creep in a bunny suit, a puppet, a tool, and not even an interesting one. She has no autonomy or will of her own, and because of that there's suddenly a suspicious odor that you might catch a whiff of when we see her merch of her being this happy-pappy baddie doing the whole Freddy's thing. It smells a little off, I give you that, at least for me. It made me have trouble accepting Vanny as anything more than a whole bunch of... Let's not think too hard about that. Vanny was really nothing, built up for 2 games before her appearance and then dethroned by that thing. All that build-up for nothing, when a whole fan base was pulsing with excitement over the idea of this devious bunny woman picking up the mantle of the rabbit before her. But what if we tried again? What if we had a chance to do it all over, delivered right into our lap? What if Cassie became the new Vanny? Likely not named Vanny, but a woman in a rabbit suit playing the role of an antagonist. Not necessarily a villain, but someone playing against Gregory, Vanessa, and possibly Fazbear Entertainment. Somebody with a mask that allows them to see behind the curtain into the flip side and break their way right through security measures. Not just that, but perhaps the capability to control not only a security force of extensive magnitude, but her animatronic followers, her friends, who will go along with what she wants. Because they are broken and abandoned, and she is the one who helped them when nobody else would. And because she is the one pulling at their coded strings, protecting them, puppeteering them. Someone who has been let down by the world, by her friends, and who has watched her only true companions get ruined by Fazbear Entertainment. And now it's time to step up to the plate as the only one who can. Initially, when Vanny was revealed, people thought of her as a copycat, as a threatening force controlling security and the animatronics. And she kind of was nothing but, as I said earlier, a puppet to another force. This new Vanny would instead turn back to that idea, but instead of a copycat murderer, she would be a copycat vigilante. But Cassie's too nice to do this, right? Well, as of right now, we know that Cassie doesn't have many, if any, friends, except the animatronics. She probably doesn't get a lot of time with her father, her one friend might have betrayed her, and she could be trapped underground for an unknown amount of time. That lays out the groundwork for how she could become embittered with Gregory, Fazbear Entertainment, perhaps the world. Depending on how long she's down there, trauma that significant could really warp her perception of the world. Or maybe not. This is a world where a company like Freddy's pretty much gets away with everything, and if we should trust the books, all but encourages the murder, kidnapping, replacing, and subjugation of children, their employees, and anyone else willing to test their frequently hazardous products. Nobody can stop this conglomerate of corporate evil, and so far, nobody has taken any form of a stand against them. Suddenly, this antagonistic new Vanny doesn't seem like such a bad person. The audience is able to take to her more because she's not just Diet Afton's new toy, but something truly new to the franchise. Cassie is nice. She's very nice, and the animatronics, at least some of them, have been nice back. Nice in a world that up until this point has not been very nice at all. Someone can be nice and still have their resolve break, and who's to say stepping up isn't quite a nice thing to do. There's also the many things that suddenly become hints in this context. The little twin tails, the taste for carrot cake, her closeness to her father, something Vanessa had though in an unhealthy way, and his fondness for Bonnie. Right now, these little tidbits aren't hints, they're just facts. But if Cassie became the new Vanny, these little facts retroactively foreshadow towards Cassie's eventual fate. Plus, maybe we'll finally get Vanny's rainbow highlights back. Cassie definitely seems like the type of fashionable girl who would be into rainbow highlights, especially since her idol Roxy has green ones. And I know what you're thinking. Naughty name. I didn't think you liked Vanny. Why would you want Cassie, a character you do like, to become a variation of her? Well, my main problem with Vanny was the execution. Even the stuff that I feel was a little too much, like the uncomfy themes that get worse if you think about them, it wouldn't be as much of an issue if they were simply handled a little better. Vanny was a villain, but she wasn't a good one. What's the difference? Presentation. I'm willing to take the chance at a second go on Vanny if there is a chance she'll be a better one. Plus, I think I would be more okay with Vanny being like a major merch machine if she was less this possessed, pitiful woman being controlled by another villain, one who's possibly murdering a bunch of kids, and instead more of this sort of anti-hero character. It just looks a little better. Think about our Vanny, the one who was possessed and supposedly controlling the animatronics through a virus of unknown origin that at least looked somewhat Aftonish, though we barely saw it. Now imagine a Vanny who was warped by trauma, who has befriended the animatronics and has control over them because she is wielding a mask that has the control of the entire security system. She knows how to tamper with the systems, she picks up some technician knowledge, and over time she picks up even more of it, learning how to wield her friends and perhaps even the Mexis to do her bidding. I'm sure she could persuade it. That is something much more threatening and intriguing, a sympathetic foil against whomever we're playing as, especially if we're playing as Gregory. Imagine Gregory becoming a new night guard like Vanessa predicted in Security Breach and finds himself having the rabbit of his past coming back to haunt him. both the visage of the Vanessa that used to chase him and the memory of the Cassie that was left behind. But this time the rabbit knows him. It remembers what he did, and there's no shaking her free of her mind. This is his worst nightmare, and Vanessa's, and anybody else who comes fumbling into the mix. This is an opportunity to not throw away Vanny, but to create a new and better one. If you must make Cassie something, don't make her another child victim. Don't make her another forgotten character who had so much potential. Make her come back as something worthwhile. And in the process, we can resurrect an idea almost lost to time. Make her Vanny. But that's just an idea. In all likelihood, Cassie probably got the concrete shaft, if you catch my meaning. The truth is, when I began Ruin, I didn't really like Cassie all that much. Likely because she starts out the game being particularly whiny. But by the time I reached the end of Ruin, I had really warmed up to her. And now I'm totally on board with her sticking around. So I hope she does. Whether as a protagonist, side character, or something else entirely. There's a lot of potential surrounding Cassie, and I hope this wasn't just a one-off, because if there's anything Fnaf could use, it's more versatile human characters. And Cassie might just be that. Fnaf hasn't, had a great track record with our lovely female protagonists, but admittedly, it's not like the men have had it much better. That is, if they weren't all just Michael. Cassie kind of feels like the first character who has been handled really well, and that's with Ruin being a shorter experience, so it would be a shame to lose her now. And for now, thank you for watching. Also, might I say that it's great that Cassie's not related to Cassidy. I had a horrible suspicion that she was going to be somehow related or connected to Cassidy, and she wasn't, and that's great. Let's please never do that.